So, I'm here with Eva Shoshany, who is a Tai Chi practitioner of decades, still a student, and also a teacher. We're going to talk about Tai Chi, the cult of Tai Chi. Do you want to address that to start off with?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, maybe we'll get into the whole idea of cult from a different point of view. I see Tai Chi as an art. And so when a person immerses themselves in an art, they can get addicted, kind of let it run, immerse themselves and get in deeper and deeper and deeper because it's giving them back something that's like nutrition. So when you have a lot of people who do that together and they sort of withdraw from society in order to do that, it can seem like a cult. Like even my nephew, who plays the trumpet and is in a marching band, in the summer he goes to marching band competitions, and his, when we talk about it, it's like that's a cult because he's so immersed in it and removed from society. That's all he's doing for weeks at a time. He's in the school bus traveling from place to place, and all these other kids are doing the same thing. It's a phenomenon. So, like for myself, I've gone to classes multiple nights a week, plus all morning on Saturday for 30 years now. And devoting that kind of time to something that again is a little removed from society, right? It's like there's only a certain number of people there and not everyone else. There's a whole lot more people who aren't there, or who don't do that with their evenings and Saturday mornings. So it can seem like it's a cult. And I've had people ask me, is this a cult? And it isn't. And neither is what my nephew's doing. It's just something that I have a lot of energy for, and that other people have a lot of energy for, and put a lot of devotion into, just like my nephew does with his music. So I think an art form can use a lot of a person's devotion and give back something that then nourishes them. And it's like there's food, there's sleep, there's water, things that you absolutely need to survive. And then for some of us, like myself, I need inspiration to survive, because I can tend to physically be sluggish. I can tend to mentally be pessimistic, emotionally be pessimistic. And the connection to Tai Chi brings me to a more neutral state, for one. It's meditation, which allows a clearing of whatever it is I'm carrying with me. And that feels really good and healthy and necessary, because otherwise I get kind of more cumulatively weighed down by what I'm carrying in my head and my heart. And I like to cleanse that and work on it. A more positive attitude emerges, and the inspiration is the fuel. So what I find in Tai Chi is I find a lot of reassurance in mimicking nature with the movements. So the movements are in time with the breathing. The element that we emulate is water, and that natural path of water to go where gravity takes it, that I can do that with my own body, that I can find those skills that, for example, like an infant breathes abdominally without learning to do that. That's how we're born, right? But over the years that changes, and a lot of stuff gets stored in the body And there's a lot of clenching going on with memories, with traumatic events, with accidents, with whatever happens to us as we get older. We become a storage house of a lot of stuff, and some of it doesn't move. It just stays and gathers, becomes like an energy block. And so learning to breathe more fully changes the energy, gives it a bigger path to flow in the body. And for someone like me, that's like a tremendous revelation to find out that I can do that myself. I don't need drugs, I don't need alcohol, I don't need chocolate. I can change my own energy. I can tap into something that brings me to a state that I feel my own spirit rising and being engaged. And that feeling of knowing that my spirit is alive and well and wants to be raised helps me, for the other 23 hours of the day or 22, And again, regular practice for me is really important because I do forget very easily, just like in Push Hands. I know that it's to my own benefit to not use force. And I love the philosophy behind that. I love proving that it works, that using softness rather than force, that the softer person in Push Hands is going to prevail. I love the idea that softness works. That's like, what could be more wonderful than proving that force is, force, bullying, that it simply isn't where real power comes from. It's not an expression of real power, it's a cover-up. Real power is uncovering. I love that. I love being in my classes, seeing demonstrations that prove that every day, and making teeny-weeny little bits of progress to feel it in my own body. Yes, force is a form of power, but so is the absence of force. And in the absence of force, there's a more mental focus, which is penetrating into the other person, which is about following their energy and being alert and aware and being willing to move out of the way. So it's about controlling myself, not controlling the other person. So I can succeed in neutralizing your push when I move out of the way correctly, and I can succeed at taking advantage where you're off balance by following you with tremendous sensitivity. So I see these things and feel these things happening all the time in my classes, and it's like Kornfeld said about enlightenment, first enlightenment, then the laundry, or first the laundry, then, whatever it is, it doesn't last. And so the laundry still has to be done, meaning I still have all that uncovering to continue to do to get into a more relaxed state and maintain that. So my breathing is naturally lower and my alertness is higher, and my use of force is less at the surface, right? So it's like working with instinct. The instinct is fight or flight. But the baby isn't afraid, right? The infant doesn't have those fears they're so innocent. And so that state of relaxation, to peel away some of those layers of fear and whatever those hardnesses are that have collected to congest the system. Tai Chi is a laboratory to decongest, to melt what's frozen inside, get the circulation going, and clear the clutter, the internal clutter, the psychic clutter, which is tremendously healthy. So, there's a lot of different levels that people practice at. So for me, I find that I'm connecting to what I would call spirit. I feel like I'm raising my own spirit. I feel like I'm clearing my mind. I feel like I'm working the body, specifically working the legs. So the legs are doing the work, giving the torso a chance to relax, and the vital organs inside to dangle and slosh against each other rather than be cemented. And for some people, they may just like being quiet for an hour in class. That was certainly a huge draw for me. I mean, I knew I needed exercise. I thought I wanted meditation, but I went shopping, so to speak, for what kind of exercise was going to work for me. And I went to jazzercise, which I hated. Felt like it was just like being at work, very noisy, rah-rah, come on, let's get it done, that kind of thing. And it's like, hey, I've been doing that all day long. I need something different at the end of the day. And I loved how quiet it was. And I loved that the goal was relaxation. I mean, I didn't know what that meant. It's like a great idea, but what does that mean? I knew I needed to relax, and then I didn't know how. But what an adventure to follow that, what sounded like a real good thing, to follow it and learn more about it. And there's plenty to learn. So that's why I'm still there. And teaching is really just a part of learning.
Martin is your teacher?
Martin Inn is my teacher. And the school is called the Inner Research Institute. It's in San Francisco. And one of his students was my beginning teacher for the first few months. And then after learning the basics, so some warm-up exercises, and learning the 37 postures that make up the Yang style short form. Once a beginner has gone through that cycle, which takes roughly 9 months to a year, depending on the pace of the class, and there's kind of an organic pace to each beginning class, they're never the same, then that class merges with the bigger group called Advanced, and that Martin was teaching that class. And so after about a year, Martin became my teacher, and I never left because it just really captured my imagination. I loved, it just felt like there was a lot of magic going on that I resonated with.
You mentioned at the beginning you consider Tai Chi an art form.
Right.
What are the mediums of Tai Chi?
Well, your body is the instrument, your energy. So first of all, like, what is your energy? We don't talk about that. We talk about health. We talk about how do you feel. But energy is, you feel energy, right? Like a friend of mine said, when the Warriors lost, this is the Golden State Warriors, and she lives in the East Bay. When the Warriors lost, she totally knew it without watching the news. It was like, you could feel it on the street, wherever she went. She walked out of her house, she's like, oh, the Warriors lost. So energy is something that we understand. Like, Cesar Millan, the guy who does the Dog Whisperer on TV. So he talks about energy a whole lot. He talks about the animal reading the person's energy and knowing what's going on in very simple and clear terms, whether the person knows it or not. Because we have a lot of filters on energy. And so thinking can, we doubt ourselves a lot, and we just make things really complicated a lot of times. So sometimes you just don't know what you're thinking. Like, should I go right? Should I go left? Why? So the art, getting back to your question, is developing in your body, cultivating your energy. And I would say, if there's another way to articulate that or illustrate a parallel, it's cultivating your intuition so that you learn to trust yourself more. So you feel right, you feel left, take the right. If that's, so you can sense in yourself where to go next, and believe in it, and not spend as much time as you did before waffling back and forth. Well, if I do this, if I do that, just sensing more naturally your own direction, your own decision-making process, so it's cleaner, smoother, less inhibited, and more effective. And you learn by results. So like being in business for all those years, tremendous amount of trial and error. Being on the floor doing push hands a million times, same thing. You learn what works and what doesn't. And you break down the unit of response into smaller and smaller and smaller units, so that your responsiveness is greater over time in much smaller units. So you have less to lose by following your intuition and keeping it alive moment to moment, dot to dot, so that you can see, did it work? And build on what's working and nix what isn't working, and constantly readjust. So that's the alertness and the effectiveness that I feel like is a product of studying this art. And it applies to everything in life, so it's tremendously useful.
A recent celebrity in the rock world took his life, and it's been something I've been meditating on a lot. And part of right now, I have in mind that choice was a path that was followed to the choice. One doesn't wake up in a moment and decide to take their life. As you're saying, there's a series of incremental choices that bring one to that place. And you were talking earlier, for instance, that you recognize in yourself your own fears, the own negative emotions, for lack of a better word.
Right. I mean, I'm no expert on, on suicide. So it's not a subject that, luckily, not terribly familiar with. But being stuck energetically can create a lot of aberrations. The ultimate aberration is losing your will to live, or deciding that it's okay to harm others. So what is balance? What is psychological balance? What is physical balance? How do you create that situation? For me, I feel that Tai Chi has helped me bring my imbalances into a better place. So this person who took his own life, what was he doing to bring his polarized feelings, let's say, a zest for life, someone who's skilled, who is a performer, I don't know who you're talking about, but someone who has a big public presence and then takes their own life. So a lot of people have polarized conditions. A lot of performers have polarized conditions. in their daily life, right? Like it's really fun to be on stage and it really sucks the rest of the time, and they can't put it together, and at some point they just say, the hell with this, I can't deal with it anymore. And they also have like tremendously unhealthy lifestyles that don't support balance or any kind of wholeness, right? They just go further and further down a path of being deprived, really, of what they need. And you get sick of the pain enough, you just want to get it over with. So I think this is a very nice tool to teach yourself that when you work at it, you can actually improve your psychology. You can improve your mental state and make it more positive. I mean, that's certainly been my experience. I think I used to feel a lot more like a victim, a lot more trapped by what was going on in here and the messages I was giving myself, and less so now.
You use the term aberration.
Aberration.
Is that a term common in communication within Tai Chi?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, energetically, yes. So one thing about Tai Chi that's really neat is how it's very parallel to Chinese medicine. So the way that acupuncture will calm excess and boost deficiency is very similar to how Tai Chi works, which makes sense. They have the same philosophical and cultural source. And so getting a little distracted over there. So in Tai Chi, in acupuncture, you will consider excess and deficiency an aberration. In other words, they're going away from the center and towards polarization. So when you have that in your own body, it's almost like just dissociation in your own body. And the treatment of Chinese medicine will bring that more into harmony. So Tai Chi does the same thing. So the aberration is the stuck energy.
Do you think it's possible to have a state of ecstasy in a healthy manner?
That's a really good question. I think it is, and at the same time, I think that's potentially another addiction. And then reactiveness about not being in that state. It's sort of like, overeating or overindulging in sweets. So you may eat something and really love the experience and therefore want to hold on, as opposed to honor the moment and allow the moment to pass and be willing to find out what happens next. And not necessarily try and rate everything. Now everything has to match this moment. So I think Tai Chi is a subtractive process where you're uncovering natural skills of mimicking nature, like rooting into the ground, having your center of gravity low and not high, being more relaxed, breathing more deeply, releasing inside and not being so fearful and tense, releasing tension. So you're recovering a lot of your natural skills by scraping layers away that are in the way. So this thing about trying to hold on to prolong ecstasy. So if you have an ecstatic experience, holding on to it is sort of like blocking what's coming next. So they're, allowing for a natural ebb and flow and not being judgmental about it. Like, oh, now that I know what ecstasy is, the hell with everything else, I just have to seek ecstasy the whole time. That's really just another problem, not a solution. So being present requires change, requires allowing change, welcoming change, accepting change, and doing the best you can with each moment. I think that's where acceptance and being present have power, is that you use everything in your ability to do the best you can at every moment, not just sometimes, not just in certain situations, but you see how powerful it is to be awake all the time. And that awakeness, that alertness, that raise of spirit, I think makes you more open to an ecstatic experience, because more of your own energy and where you place yourself will be in greater harmony. And so you're promoting good health all the way around. If you're lucky, that will bring you some healthy, ecstatic experience. I mean, I think you have like a positive avalanche where more parts of your life are helpful and not hurtful.
Do you think that Tai Chi has helped your mindset to be more at peace with challenges? Because in a greater picture you see this is actually a seed of growth.
Well, I think that the thing that's really cool and that has helped my mindset more than anything is the idea of constant training to be lighter, less forceful, less stuck, so that there's a more openness to what's coming next. There's less screens in the way of, this is going to be awful, I can't do this because I hate it, I can't, I won't, it's not going to work. Those messages, those limiting messages, I think are freed up a little bit more, so there's less of a burdensome feeling about approaching new things. I mean, I'm still the same person.
What about the burden of the tried and true? Because I find that as a challenge for myself. Let's take as an example yoga. I've been practicing yoga for many years. There's times I wake up in the morning and the thought of going to practice is a burden. Do you find that true for yourself?
Well, I do, and yet the thing that makes a practice is that you do it whether you feel like it or not. And you find out by doing it why it's worth it. So it doesn't really, I don't consider it a failing to have a bad attitude in the car. I don't want to get in the car. I don't want to fight traffic. I don't feel like it today. I think those feelings are that's fine. But to not dwell on it so much and to go anyway, that's where the difference is. And I think that's a difference between a certain psychological state and another. Now, ultimately, if there's less of that playing those tapes, since I'm going anyway, I might as well enjoy it, being in the car and whatever. Over time, that gets better.
Do you have, this is like sort of a left turn, but I think it could be important for someone who's new to the thought of Tai Chi. As a student and also as a teacher, do you have advice for someone who's just starting out for things to be aware of in choosing a teacher that would help them get a nice, like you talk a lot about roots, so if we're planting a seed to give fertile ground.
I think it's very obvious to feel whether you're in the right place or not, whether this is for you. It's like, your sense of smell. There's certain things that smell good to you. There's an energy that you either feel at home with or not. And I certainly felt that way in the school when I walked in there the first time. I felt like I was in the right place. And like I said, I'd gone to several. So I've also heard people say they called on the phone and they heard Martin's voice and they felt like, wow, I want to go see what this teacher is all about. Watching him do the form, it's like, wow, what is he doing? How is he doing that? It's very intriguing to me. I was intrigued the first time I saw it, and not so at Jazzercise. That was like, get me out of here. So I think it's very obvious to people when they're, I watch it with the clothing at Open Studio. When somebody puts something on that I made that worked for them, they didn't want to take it off. So there was some kind of resonance, and that's an energetic thing. So I think just don't stop until you don't settle for less. Go to the teacher that you feel that bond with.
Earlier you said the other 22, 23 hours of the day. I took that to mean you have an hour practice and then there's the rest of the day.
Well, the class, the one class is an hour. I usually go for multiple classes. So I was actually just quoting something from writing where it was like, okay, so you took the class, what about the other 23 hours in the day?
But part of what I'm wondering about is the state of sleep. That's a part of that 24-hour cycle. Is sleep a practice?
Do you mean, is there a connection between how you sleep, like how I sleep, in connection to my Tai Chi practice?
I think I mean more, can one bring consciousness to the state of sleep?
It's a great question. Again, that's not something I feel like I can really address with any level of education. From experience, I think falling asleep and the quality of sleep has changed for me, again, because of being mentally obsessed more so before, where I would have things from work, for example, going through my head, and I just wouldn't be able to stop the mental obsession, really, obsessing on the same things, typically things that weren't working, things that were bothering me. I just go over them and over them and over them and over them and feel awful, and it would prevent me from sleeping. So that condition has greatly improved, and I can, again, take more responsibility for my mental hygiene and clear more of the noise when something's bothering me so that I can sleep.
Nothing more is coming to mind.
Okay.
Is there anything more that you have in mind?
No, I think that was good.
All right.
All right, great.
Thanks for your time.
Sure, absolutely.
And I can push any part of your
Right.
arm, your body.
Right.
Okay.
So my ward off is helping me. It's like my shield.
Okay.
So this is a perfect example. So you see the energy coming up. So what Tai Chi teaches you, so when you go up.
So you could do that too? You could grab your... Okay.
So the thing is,
All right.
when your energy comes up, you are more brittle. So think about when we get old and we are in the aging process, a lot of people lose their connection to the ground and they're top heavy and fragile. So this is the opposite. This is about connecting to the ground like a tree. So one of the biggest compliments you can give someone in Tai Chi is, you have good root. But it doesn't come easy. You don't just say that because you like the person. They have to earn it by sticking to the ground, growing into the ground. So see how this is a little stiff? That's actually not going to help you. So you want to be like water. So when you feel like you're prioritizing using force over other things, you have to stop. But can you stop yourself?
Ooh, that was good.
It's a beautiful world
For you,
It's a beautiful world
not me.
It's a beautiful world It's a beautiful